Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about Heart the Lover by Lily King, which came out in October of 2025. This book is actually both a prequel and a sequel to Writers and Lovers, which I didn't realize. I have read that book, but I read it when it came out several years ago, and to be honest, the only thing I remember about Writers and Lovers is that I cried and that I liked it. So I came into this experience of reading Heart the Lover kind of it being a standalone novel. In this book, we're following a female protagonist. There are two main settings. So in the first part of the book, we are following her through college as she falls in love with two different boys, one boy in particular. And then in the second part of the book, it's many, many years later, and she's already married her husband. She has two kids, and there's a precipitating event that brings her back into the life of her college boyfriend and lover. I have been filming a lot of long form content, but because the only thing that's rewarded by the algorithm these days is short form content, I've also been trying to do a lot of short form as well. So for my short form content, I have been thinking of like three main buckets. So if I read something that I really like and I think other people should read, regardless of their personal preferences, I feel like I'm gonna call it Lil's Pick, and it's like my pick for you guys to check out. If I think it's not worth checking out, I'm gonna just say skip this. But then I feel like there's this middle category where if you have like the preference or the personal experience or the mindset or mood really that fits this book, then you might like it. And I feel like Heart the Lover fits perfectly in that category. I feel like you might like this book if a few of these things resonates with you. So the first is, I feel like Lily King does a great job of capturing the feeling of being young, and especially being like a liberal arts major or an English major on an American college campus. That's what kind of the first part of the book is about. It is a love triangle. Like, this guy Sam hits on her and they start dating, but they're not a good fit. And so then she kind of falls in love with his housemate Yash. And then the rest of the story is kind of around the impression. I mean, they don't really stay together, but like the impression or the impact that this relationship she has with Yash has in the future. But for me, like, I did a classic seminar or like a canon class my freshman year of college, and a lot of the scenes that Lily King writes in that part of the book where they are debating about these different lofty ideals, Greek tragedy, or like what it means to fall in love, like that was really kind of what we talked about and what we talked like, and just how we thought that all these texts were so important. In the story, Jordan, the main character, talks about like the impact of this short story she read called The Last Fall by Ray Hart, who I think is fictionalized, but it's kind of like what it inspires her to be a writer. And I just remember, yeah, similar things that we would read and them really feeling so important. So if you are an American that like went to, like a millennial that like went to a small liberal arts college or like studied English at an American college at that time, I feel like the book will feel really nostalgic to you, and like that is something that resonated with me and that made it enjoyable to read. The second thing is, I think you might like this if you're okay with a coming of age story that doesn't really have like a very strong message. And I really don't feel like the hand of the author pushing these characters along, like, oh, she learned this lesson and then she realized that like this was the love of her life, the one that got away, or she realized like she was a bad person for doing XYZ. Instead, I feel like you need to come into this book thinking like, oh, this is just an example of a life and a collection of snapshots. And it's like a compilation of events that happens in this woman's life, and there's not gonna be like a justification for it. Like, sure, we see the impact and the ramifications of like the decisions she makes, or even just the things that she does. Like, I don't even think a lot of them are like conscious decisions, but this book views life as kind of just like an unfolding of those moments, and then how the main character feels, how perhaps other people around her feel. you know, when we were discussing this with my girlfriends in our little book club that we have, I feel like some of them were kind of like, what was the point of this? Like, so what? It was too kind of like superficial, and some of the plot points were a little bit sensationalized. But I do feel like life is sometimes like that. Like, crazy things happen, random things happen, and you're not, like, you living your life is not the same as being like the main character in a story or being a protagonist. And I feel like this style of writing from Lily King is much more realistic in that sense. It's kind of just like the vibes and the feelings, and the way she writes it is quite delicious and like makes you want to keep reading it. I don't think you're ever going to understand like, oh, this is why Jordan acted this way, or like, this is the lesson that we should learn from what Jordan has experienced. Instead, I feel like it's more of a just very tender, lived experience of this one character, which arguably is like harder to write and hard to write well. So I think if you're okay with that, then you really might like this. All in all, it was an easy read, but not an unskilled read. The writing is fantastic. I think Lily King also does dialogue really well, and I feel like I could see comparisons to maybe Rachel Cusk or Sally Rooney, who are both writers I love, but compared to Sally Rooney, I feel like this is a little bit less angsty. But they both have that similar sense of just kind of like, this is what life is, this is what's realistic, these are the complex interiority of these characters, and I'm not really gonna like shove my authorial point of view and my takeaways into this piece of fiction. So thanks guys for listening for this long. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate it, and stay tuned for my next review.